So it's April 1990. A 16-year-old Eric is going down to Mexico on a mission trip with his high school classmates. He is so nervous of going down because of his past situations with his former school. This is the brave story he's going to share. So please help me welcome Eric.
I was nervous, sitting in that car, going down I-5 as we were headed to Mexico. It was a thing that I was dealing with in my life that I have, even to this day. It's called Tourette's syndrome. I thought people would pick on me because I have Tourette's syndrome. What is Tourette's syndrome, really quick? It is a syndrome that I have involuntary muscle movements, which means that my muscles move, whether I move them or not. They decide to move them on all by themselves. And as I was going down there, I was nervous because of what had happened before when I was in junior high, and the last trip I went on was with a bunch of students. It was very scary because I got picked on and teased on. So this was my first trip at my high school with these students. So we get down to San Diego, and I spend the night in the church in one of the pews, sleeping. Still a little bit nervous of what's going to happen. Next morning we get up, we cross the border, and we go to this orphanage that we were going to help do some work and stuff between Tecate and Tijuana, Mexico. And so we pitched up the tents, and that day we went down and we had to dig trenches and getting ready to build a wall to put the playground in so the children don't be running around loose. And that first night, I remember so very well. I went to bed early because I was really tired of digging that trench. So I went to bed early, and everybody else was still up. All the high school guys were still up, running around, talking. And so I lay down, and all of a sudden, about half an hour, I woke up, and everybody looked at me through the tent, and they teased me, and I'm like, oh no, here we go again. So that night, I didn't sleep that well. I was scared now. I was frightened of what these people really think of me. Next morning we get up and they shuffle some of us into a van, and we have to go over to Tijuana to pass out flyers for the church service the following day after, over at this place where a church is built on a landfill. So I went over there and they made me pass out flyers with two gals. So, because they didn't want the girls to be all by themselves, so they had a guy with two girls. So I was passing out flyers, and during that time, I was thinking, I have to tell somebody I have Tourette's syndrome. I have to tell one of my classmates. So first of all, I thought about the girls. No, it's too, I was 16. I was like, no, not at that time. So I had to think of the boys. Well, there was only one boy in my sophomore class who was with me, and that was Roy. No. And I thought, oh, how about Josh in freshman class? Nah. How about Gino or Danny or Joel, and who are seniors? No, because they're getting ready to graduate from high school. So there was 5 junior boys that I could probably tell. So I went, Lloyd and I hardly knew each other that well, so I probably said, And then Eli and I are good friends, but all right. So it came down to Chris and Carl. And so I was asking myself, who should I tell? Who should I tell? And it came to me. It came to tell Carl. So we finished out passing out the flyers and stuff. We got a soda somewhere in between. We get back in the car. I was still very nervous of what I was going to say and what I was going to tell Carl. We get back to the camp and the orphanage, and we have lunch, and then we go work and still dig that trench in the afternoon. And then that night, after dinner, we had a big bonfire. And we were all sitting around. And in the meantime, I was sitting just enough back so people could see my face, but not see how nervous I was. So we're singing worship songs and just enjoying time in fellowship. And after all that was over, I finally got up, went over to Carl, and said, "Hi, Carl, how are you?" And Carl replied back to me, "Hi, Eric, how are you doing? Carl, can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And Carl said, "Sure, but I have to do some other stuff first, so could you give me a few minutes?" I said, "Okay." So I went back down to my seat. In the meantime, Mr. Clements, who was our lead teacher on this trip, watched what was going on. And so he knew that something was seriously going down. But he did not come over to me right away. He sat over there and kind of watched me a little bit. He was across on the other side of the fire. So, in a few minutes later, Carl came up, talked to me, and said, "Hey, Eric, how you doing?" I said, "Good. Could we talk somewhere privately?" So we did. We went behind this big mountain of rock, which we had to fill in the next morning to get the stuff going so we can put the fence up. And I told Carl, I said, "Carl, I'm very scared to death." And he says, "Why? What's going on?" I told him, I said, "I struggle from Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome causes me to have involuntary movements in my body." And immediately he embraced me and hugged me like if it was like, "You know what? It's okay, man. You are accepted." And as he embraced me, so did Mr. Clements. He came behind and embraced us as well. It was a moment that I felt like I was accepted in life. It gave me a sense of comfortable feeling that I can tell people that I struggle with Tourette's and not be picked on. Also at that time too was the time I also accepted Christ. Because with that acceptance came that acceptance of me accepting Christ into my life. So on that day, two great things happened. I told another person that I struggle from a disease, and I also accepted Christ that night. That night will always be, that night was special. After that, I felt more comfortable. I went back down. I felt more relaxed. I also want to say thank them, because nowadays, what those two gentlemen did made me a better man today. I became a great Christian man and grown in my love of Jesus and God. I've become not so scared to share with people my Tourette syndrome. That's why that day in April of 1990 was a very special day. And that's my story.